Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we are going to be talking about One Piece. If you are a long-time viewer of the channel, you have probably seen like the 2 or 3 videos that I did on One Piece, but I really love One Piece, and I don't really talk about it enough here. Oda, to me, is like almost on par with Sanderson, basically, when it comes to the craft of his storytelling. Basically, when it comes to watching a master at work, and in a way, a author who is basically in his bag right now. That's sort of the best way to put it. I could definitely tell with this latest chapter, which was insanely hyped, that Oda was just like having fun with it, man. Like, and he was just having fun as a storyteller, and that's how I see Brandon in his writing, especially near the end of his books. He's like, I've been waiting to do this whole time, and that's why he does his binges at the end of his books, because those epic conclusions are just like, you got to keep going until you can finish them. And it definitely feels that way when I read his books, and I can definitely tell it's the way he feels when he's writing them, because usually at the end of his books he'll do like a sprint. When he doesn't usually do sprints, he just writes every single day continuously until the book's done. But you could tell when he's like, when Brandon's in his bag, he will just write until that end portion gets finished. It's called the Sanderlanche, I think that's what they called it, where the end of his books, it all just starts tumbling down, all the snow just starts avalanching all together, and Oda's sort of doing that thing right now. So I want to get into a little bit about One Piece and talk about why it's epic fantasy and why it should be more in the conversation for Westerners. So I'm not really going to get into any spoilers here, so don't really worry. This is more of a love letter to One Piece and Oda and sort of the craftsmanship that's going on with the story. I'll give a brief thing about One Piece if you don't know what it is. It's a pirate adventure where the world government is trying to oppress the world and have control, and there's an age of pirates that started with a man named Gold D. Roger. He was basically the greatest pirate of all time, and where he stored his treasure was all in one piece, and everybody has to go out and find it, and they'll become the next pirate king like he was. So we pick up with this kid. His name's Luffy, and his goals and aspirations are just to go out there and be pirate king. And what Pirate King means to him is not having all the treasure or ruling all of this stuff. It's just to be the most free person in the world. He just wants to be the most free. And that's why what's happening right now in the story is just phenomenal and amazing. But basically the premise of the story is Luffy just goes from area to area and sidelines his journey from his own goals to go free people from this dictatorship and this corruption of this government and the sort of government entities and policies they have put into certain places, but I can't really get more specific than that, otherwise I would be spoiling the story. But it's a story about liberation and freedom, and it's like super goofy, and it's a lot of fun, and it's like heart-wrenching. Oda does a great job blending this like comedy and comedic moments with connecting with characters and really loving them and loving their motives and what they do. Oda definitely doesn't shy away from getting super deep with a lot of stuff. It won't necessarily seem like that anything before the Arlong Park sort of arc. There's definitely like 10 to 15 episodes where Luffy's just gathering his crew together and they're just goofy and stupid and all of this, and you'll get little things here and there, but it's not until Arlong Park where you're like, okay, this is what Oda's doing. This is like the story that he's telling. It's about a man who will sacrifice anything for his friends, and save people who can't necessarily save themselves, and that's why he trains to get stronger and all of this stuff. And his powers are honestly really stupid. He's a rubber man. Like, he just can, like, his whole body's rubber, and he can punch really hard with like his rubber body, and he learns how to adapt this power to make him one of the most powerful people in this sort of world. And it keeps escalating and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And a lot of people look at One Piece and go, episode like 1000, like there is 1,000 chapters in. I don't know if I can get into this, but it's like reading an epic fantasy series, right? That's why a lot of people don't necessarily want to get into Wheel of Time, but those who are in that community knows it's worth that wait. When you get into book 4, you're like, all right, here we go, the world's about to get so big and we're about to go crazy with this story. And that's why I relate One Piece to epic fantasy so much, because it is a long series, and when people typically think in the West of animation or cartoons, they think of like the Batman or anything like that, especially like my parents. They just think about like the Saturday cartoon cartoons they grew up with, and they're like, those stories sucked and they didn't really do anything, and they did the same thing over and over again, and it wasn't a continuous story, right? But the thing with One Piece, it is a continuous story, and it's a masterwork in fantasy. There's others, of course, like Bleach and Naruto, My Hero, all of this stuff. I think all of those are fantasy as well. Obviously, fantasy is a very broad genre, but we typically don't think of One Piece as epic fantasy in the traditional sense, I guess. It's just epic fantasy transposed, I don't know if that's the right word, to comic form, right? Berserk is that as well. And one of the really cool things is that like YouTubers and their influence have sort of opened the gates to the fantasy community. It's been really cool to see, especially on YouTube, because I follow the One Piece community, and I follow like the Wheel of Time and the Cosmere communities, and just the fantasy community in general. And it's been cool to see these really big YouTubers in the fantasy realm, which is like 400, 300,000 subscribers. Like those are big influencers in this community, who are getting into manga and all of this sort of stuff, because it's huge. It's really a big deal, I think, for me, because it's bringing both those communities together for me. And it's been so cool to see Murphy talk about One Piece and Daniel talk about One Piece and Berserk and stuff, and it's like, this is stuff that I've been reading for the longest time, and I've always thought about it as fantasy, but like, it's not in the big realms known as a part of fantasy, right? And I don't think it needs to. It doesn't need to always, like, everything doesn't need to like come together big like that. I just love that it's starting to get its like recognition here in the West as this epic fantasy. It is in another form, like it's in a comic book form rather than novels, so I get why it wouldn't mainly appeal to epic fantasy fans, but it's just fantasy just done in another genre, like fantasy done in movies or television. A lot of the times their source material are books, but One Piece, obviously its medium is comic books and then to animation, and you know, us nerds, we love comic books, so you know, it's all very blurred in that line. But I love that we're starting to get to this, like, these fantasy communities online are talking about One Piece and the magic of its story. But yes, you guys should have seen me, those who are caught up on One Piece and know the latest chapter. I woke up that day, immediately sprang to my computer and typed in the scans for the new chapter, and it at least took me like 30 minutes to almost an hour to read, because each panel I was freaking out at what was happening. And this is sort of what I mean when it comes to epic fantasy and all of this, is I have those same reactions when I'm getting to the end of a Brandon book or a Robert Jordan book, right? Like, some of the greatest huge big moments in these fantasy series you've been reading books and books and books about, and the payoff is starting to finally actually happening. That's what's happening in the One Piece community right now, and it's so cool to see, and it's so cool to be a part of, and that's one of the big reasons that I love being a part of this community and the One Piece community and the fantasy community, is we all get to come together and we get to talk about all this crazy stuff that's going on. And it's so cool to see the storytelling unraveling, because the thing that Oda does is he has threads, multiple threads that are going on that people can theorize about of what's going to happen next. And the same thing in the Brandon books and all of that. It's like he leaves out all these threads that you can follow. And the thing that Oda does is he has this community really fixated on a few things. So somebody will be really fixated on one part of the story and they'll make theorized out of that. But what Oda does in his payoff, where most everybody will like it, is he takes a little bit from all of these strands. Rather than concentrating on one and really making sure that's the one that's it, he takes all of these strands he's been building for 2 decades, and they're all coming together and they're all working together to have a satisfying climax in this sort of like story that's going on right now. And it's so cool to see, because I in retrospect, looking at it, I see all the theories that people made about this climax of this battle, and they all fixate on 1 to 2 things, but Oda does a masterwork of just weaving everything together. And in a way, nobody's necessarily fully wrong. You know, you have people that are like half right, kind of right, a quarter right, and it's really satisfying and fulfilling to the rest of the community, because Oda knows in his mind he's going to bring all of these elements together to work together for this conclusion, or this is not the conclusion, this is like probably the second to last arc in One Piece, so we're getting there. But he takes all of those pieces that he's been working together, and he knows they're all going to fit together like this, where theorizers will focus on maybe like one aspect, 1 to 2 aspect, and really hone in on that, become fixated, and you have to step back and look at the grander and bigger story that's going on. And it just reminded me of epic fantasy in our community, where we talk about George R. R. Martin and his series and how he's going to end that, a Stormlight Archive, how that's going to end and go, and just getting on the community and talking about all of this stuff and theorizing these stories. And it's had me think a lot about what I want to do with my own works. I'm only on my second draft, my first book, but I have a vision like Brandon and like Oda, and they're just very, very inspiring to me, getting specific works done. I'm also on the AuthorTube side of YouTube, and I follow a lot of people that do this sort of stuff and self-publishing or traditional publishing and documenting that journey. And it's so cool to see all of these aspects and avenues coming together. I don't know, it's so cool just to see the whole community come together and talk about this huge event. I wanted to make a One Piece video this week because obviously the huge things were coming out. I was going to make it last week, but decided not to because this chapter was coming out this week. So this will be up this week, and then next week I believe I'm going to talk about Halo a little bit, and then talk about my writing, because I just watched the Halo episode, so I can't wait to bring that to you guys. But what do you think? Do you read One Piece? Do you get what I'm talking about when I'm talking about epic fantasy and Oda and all of this? I just wanted to give praise to Oda, praise to One Piece. I love being a part of this community. I watched Brago's reaction, I watched Snoozy K's reaction, and I was like, I was having the same reactions. It's so cool just to get online and just be like, yes, like that's what I was experiencing it, and I love experiencing it with you guys. And that's the biggest thing about this is you get to come on the community on the internet and find your friends that all love this stuff together. I have friends in real life that talk about One Piece, and every week it comes out, we're like, bro, and we're like texting about it, and it's so cool to just talk to people about these awesome stories. It's made me reflect a lot on my writing and what I want to try to accomplish, and it's so cool. So it's sort of my like love letter to Oda, to One Piece, just getting on here and talking about it with you guys. And that's the biggest thing, is the fantasy community on the internet is so special, and I love being a part of that, and I'm very thankful that I am a part of this community in some way. And I love getting on the forums and talking in chats on the live Dusty Wheel shows on Wednesdays. I always love those, getting in the chats on Brandon's live streams, talking with YouTubers about One Piece when the newest chapter's out. Like, man, I'm just so happy about this, and I love that I get to be a part of this community. So thank you guys so much for watching. Next week I'll be bringing you a Halo sort of video, talking about how I liked the adaptation and some things that I might have had criticism on. Fair warning, I really loved it. I'm a huge Halo fan, so we'll talk about that next week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.